So we are live. Hello, Facebook. Hello, YouTube. Tonight, I brought to you guys Tony Miller from the Ottawa Small Landlord Association. It's new, right, Tony? You got your...
It's spanking brand new. Well, it's pretty not as new as your little one, but it's just a few weeks old, I'd say. You know, actually, it's been a few months in the making, but yeah, it's I'll say a month. How's that? And the growth's been good.
Your meetup anyway, so you already almost were an association, just not formally.
It was, yeah. The meetup that I have, that was Tony Miller Real Estate Investing Meetup. You know, that was going for a long time, and I sort of just morphed that into OSLA, Ottawa Small Landlord Association, and so I have the Facebook group now, and of course the meetup group is still there with almost 900 people, and the Facebook group at about 450. So it's growing, and people seem to be enjoying it. So I'm very thankful that people seem to be liking it.
Tony, you do a great job. Like the way that you're informing everybody of what's happening in the Ottawa area, how you're advocating at a municipal and provincial level for landlords in Ontario. Like it's amazing to see how we're getting the strength that we've needed all these years.
Well, thanks. It's, you know, it all started with you and looking at Ontario Landlord Watch for 10 years. And yes, I've been doing some in Ottawa for several years at the local level, but not really nose to the grindstone type of advocacy that I'm more involved in now and ramping up. So it wasn't at your level, and so now I'm trying to match Kayla, guys. Like, step for step, it's pretty tough to keep pace with her. But but kudos to you too. Of course, you're doing great work there at Ontario Landlords Watch. So you have an update though, right? Talking about what you're doing at the LTV stuff, or what's going on?
You're giving me all the credit. And here you've been a part of this thinking process. Like every time I get these weird ideas or what we should be going, I'm like, Tony, what do you think? Like, is this a good idea? Like before I go and shoot myself in the foot with it, or what's going on? So give yourself some credit with how much involvement you have with Ontario Landlords Watch as well. And I thank you for that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
But we want to give a quick update before we get into the broadcast that we really wanted to jump on board with this article that was recently posted in London. But again, this is about the delays at the Landlord and Tenant Board level. We got an email from the chair of the Landlord and Tenant Board telling us that they are working out a plan, but they didn't give us anything about that plan. We're hoping to, schedule a meeting with them to get more info on what that plan is. But it said that there is expected delays if people are phoning and emailing. They are trying to redirect some of their services or their resources. So we're looking forward to see what's happening. But they're supposed to be planning these evictions or scheduling these evictions, or may not even be evictions, these applications.
Yeah.
In the middle of November, so November into 2021, and that they would have 20 to 30 days to get us the order, which I find it like they made it look like it was new, like 20 to 30 days, but in reality, they said it's their policy.
It's their service level. I guess they have service level agreements within the tribunal. So how exactly are they going to do that? Are they adding more staff? Are they shuffling existing staff around? What have you heard?
I know that what's new with Bill 184 and coming into how now the Landlord and Tenant Board has to digest Bill 184, they have introduced the dispute resolution officers. And that will come into play more so on these payment agreement plans that most tenants are not filling out. But even if they do fill out, they still have a way of still having those days go by on that payment agreement plan and still have that case heard by an adjudicator. But a dispute resolution officer, maybe they're working something different. Maybe they're going to get some of these more applications being heard by a dispute resolution officer. But the only thing that we can do right now is speculate. And so we're hoping once we get that meeting, we'll bring that type of update into our members. I like to inform everybody that I have been pushing as much as I possibly can right now on getting a meeting, hopefully by Zoom, with the Attorney General, Doug Downey, in order to talk about the solutions and the system that we actually think that could go really well for good landlords and good tenants, and of course the taxpayers. And we've asked our members to email the Attorney General, Doug Downey, and help us say, hey, we want you to have a meeting with the Ontario Landlords Watch Council so that we can actually have our solutions heard by them. And when you do email him, CC your MPP in that email as well, just so that they have an understanding of what's happening and what our request is. I know that my MPP, because I haven't gotten a response back from the Attorney General, so I contacted my MPP. They said to resend it and CC her in it. And then if I don't hear back in a week, we'll let them know, and hopefully their staff can communicate with their staff, and hopefully we can get this meeting.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, a quick question. How many adjudicators have they hired? How many new adjudicators have they hired at the LTB? I read something, I think it was from EOLO, if I remember right, and they did hire a bunch, and I just don't know what their start dates are, or if they've already started. There was a sizable number that were hired. I just don't know if they've been deployed.
That's where we were under the impression. For some reason I want to hear in like the 20 mark of years, but again, we didn't know exactly where they were going to be positioned. And obviously they're going to try to position them in the most high populated area of these applications coming in. But again, that's the adjudicators, and then we have the resolution officers. And that's a part of our solution was, hey, maybe we don't need all of these adjudicators at least $110,000 salaries. Maybe we can get 2 dispute resolution officers for the price of 1 adjudicator and help speed up this process and address the actual backlog. But we're happy to say, I want to make sure everyone knows that we need you to continue to keep putting your complaints into the Ontario Ombudsman, because they are still actively investigating the Social Justice Tribunal for the Landlord and Tenant Board. And I know a lot of people like, what are they going to do? But they have a great track record of when they create a report and they do present that report, it does tend to get listened to. And that's what we're hoping to do by having our members making sure that you're contacting the Ontario Ombudsman and make sure that you're addressing the complaints regarding the backlog and the delays that we've been experiencing well before COVID.
Yeah. And speaking of addressing the backlogs of things and the issues, homelessness has increased during COVID. I'm not going to say that it's actually increased because of evictions, people being evicted. I'm sure that it's happened, right? But to blame everything on people being evicted and then becoming homeless, I think that's an exaggeration, I would suggest. But I think that people, being stuck inside has been a big change for a lot of people. It's been difficult, job loss, income loss, divorce, so mental health's really taken a bloody beating for a while. So, like you, I don't want to see anybody homeless. It boggles my mind that there are we're in Ottawa and people are sleeping on the sidewalks. I don't get it. I really don't. And I don't know what the perfect solution is, but to me, it's a matter of just take them, bring them somewhere, like put them somewhere, like permanent housing, that type of thing. So as we know, here in Ottawa, we had the Landlord Partnership Program that was run by the city, and that offered landlords who wanted to participate subsidized rent. The city would say, here's a tenant for you. Maybe they're vulnerable, maybe they have some mental health issues, not sure, but they need to be housed, and we'll subsidize the rent, and here you go, right? And so it's a way to help get people off the streets and out of shelters into permanent housing. That sort of went the way of the dodo, and there wasn't a lot of interest. But recently, there was also here in Ottawa, another attempt has been made, and they found that 60 to 65 landlords to take part in the program, which is good. Their goal was 100. So they've basically taken 65 people from, who are vulnerable in bad situations, and they've moved them into permanent housing. And the landlords are taking part in that. Now, the program offers, of course, the subsidized rent. There's a damage fund, in case the property gets damaged by the tenant, then the city can chip in and help repair that. So that's really good, and I'm happy to see that. But I wanted to ask you, like in London, there was an article out today that the headline made me nauseous. Just reading it, it was pretty slanted. But I wanted to ask you, like, what are your thoughts about that? Do you think it doesn't work?
Well, these programs have been out for well before COVID. They're really trying to market them now and trying to talk to private landlords, organizations. CMHC says, we're going to need at least 200,000 units to really address this housing crisis. They've mentioned that we need private landlords. And Michael Hart, if you're looking at the comments here, like Michael Rosehart, like I got to get him on Facebook Live for sure, 100%. But
hey, Mike, how's it going, man?
It makes sense for the concept that I see where they're trying to go. In reality, like you said, Tony, we don't want anyone to be homeless, but what they're doing is creating these unsustainable systems. They're creating Band-Aid solutions into dealing with their affordable housing crisis. And we're trying to come to them with, our boots on the ground to tell them this is what is needed. And in this article, and we're going to post a link. Let's see if I can get the link here now so everyone kind of know what I'm talking about here, is that they talk about landlords want that guaranteed rent. Landlords want the damages to be covered. And landlords also want to be able to have that mediation concept in to dealing with difficult tenants. But in reality, like guaranteed rent, that's nice. What kind of damages are we talking about if our tenants are walking out with the copper water pipes out of the walls and damaging kitchen cabinets? Are they going to be replacing that type of damage? And are they going to be really helping us mediate when the tenants are bringing as many people into that unit as much as they possibly can to, plug in their electric bikes, to use the washroom facilities, the shower facilities, and crash inside of the units? There's still no control. And some of these landlords who've had dealt with this program before and not being able to control what type of people are moving in, and when they do give them a unit, maybe that relationship is already it's going downhill. But what is it going to do to the other units who are not on that program? So I just spoke with one of our landlords who tried to sign up 12 units to this program, and they weren't ready. They didn't have anything together. So
she's the one who wanted to do all of the 12. She didn't want to do just one unit. She wanted to do all 12.
All or nothing. It was all or nothing. And it's true. Like if you have, and these people, we're not social workers. Landlords are not social workers, and we're not able to deal with, mental health and addiction like that per se. But that's where government housing should come into play. Because how many government units are out there, if we do have the availability, and let's say that someone moves in, they get a great job, or the boyfriend moves in, or whatever the case may be, they just go to market rent. So now they've taken a unit off of the market away from someone who is actually needing that supportive housing. And that's where supportive housing could come into government housing and wrap the services around them. But for the private sector, these people, there's no incentives for them to move out of government housing into the private sector anymore. But this is about the creation of more units. And that's the problem that we're seeing now is, yes, we want the rent, we want some damages that can come, we want mediation, but no one's signing up because we have a broken landlord and tenant board system, and the Residential and Tenancy Act does not protect their landlords.
Right.
So we need to, and for us landlords fighting for 10 years to get the changes from a provincial level, we're now going, why aren't they listening to us? Why are they wanting to keep throwing money away and wasteful money and having to put money into, shelters and emergency shelters and hospital and more policing, when all they have to do is work with landlords and address our issues and the concerns?
Well, I'll jump in. I think those programs can work, and I think Ottawa proves that, with the 60-65 type of landlords who have jumped in and jumped onto the program. But I think it has to work a certain way. There have to be certain incentives. There has to be certain conditions before the landlords will jump in, especially when I'm talking about small landlords. There's a big difference between the mid-sized large landlords and the small landlords. And I think one of the first things, I'll rhyme off 4 or 5 reasons here why it may or may not work. Number one, like I said, it has to be the right conditions. And you touched on this briefly. Private landlords, we're not equipped, educated, or experienced to be able to provide social support to vulnerable people or people who are moving from shelters or from the house or from the street into housing. What do I know? I'm not a doctor. I can't help these people. I'm not qualified to do that. And 99.9% of the landlords I know are not qualified to do that. So there has to be a very rigid and support system in place provided by the government to ensure that the tenants that come in to these programs and we house them, that they have the support that they need. They can't rely on us to do that. Okay. Number two, you got to have a real strong property management team, no doubt, to be able to, respond adequately to the type of services and the issues that might come up. The second thing I was going to mention, you mentioned as well. You took all my points, Kayla. You stole them. Oh my gosh.
It shows that you agree with me then.
Oh yeah, I do. It's the same thing. It's the LTV, of course, right? If we, we're taking these people and we obviously the people, the landlords who jump onto the program, they don't want to see someone living on the street. They want to help out in their way, and this is how they do it. But if you can't evict the tenant quickly and you don't have any legal recourse as we don't have today, I should say rather, then it's almost like a game breaker right there. It's a deal breaker right there. If the LTV isn't fixed or we can't evict the tenants, and I know they may have mental health issues or addictions or something like that, but if we have to evict them for whatever reason, dangers to others, or maybe they're harming themselves or wrecking the unit, then we have to be able to do it quickly. And today we can't do that. We know that. It's a 6 to 9 month wait just to get a bloody hearing at the LTV. And in some cases in some cities where the city would become the leaseholder, they're actually signing the lease on behalf of the tenants, the vulnerable people. Well, if we want to evict the sublet, like the tenants who come in, do you think the city's going to agree to that? They don't want to see those people out on the street. It'll just be very difficult to do. So the LTV really needs to be fixed, I think, before any, smaller landlords jump on. Was everything. And I think that one of the other things too is that small landlords, and part of the definition of small landlords, that we have a much smaller financial capacity. We can't take on a lot of risk, because we just don't, we're not money bags. A lot of people, a lot of small landlords, they're working working class people, they're working hard, they're doing their thing. If they make one mistake, they're screwed, right? That might be it. They're out and they pack up their stuff, they sell their properties, and they're out of the game to get altogether. So we don't want that to happen. You want them to have success. But for small landlords, it doesn't make sense. If I have like 5 or 6 doors, and that's my future, and I'm doing it, to help my family, to have my lifestyle just for today. And, I'm never going to be the Timber Creeks and the Achilles and all those big guys, nor do I want to be. But why would I risk taking on someone and ruin my future that way? I just don't have I don't have the deep pockets to do it. So that makes it really difficult. So I think it's really, if you're a mid-size to a large-size landlord, and you have the financial wherewithal to do it, by all means, go ahead, because your risk tolerance levels are much higher. You can take it on. But for small landlords, I wouldn't suggest doing it, and especially mainly because you can't evict people quickly. You're stuck, really, eh?
Well, even when we have, let's say that you did accept someone on this program, what is that dollar amount? So if you do have, here's your market rent, what you expect to get, but they want you to have it below market rent before you give it to sign up on this program. Now that you're signed on the program, when we get a 1.8 or a 2.2% or a 0% increase that you can do on your rental units, what's that going to do to your building or to your property when you're trying to go and resell it, when you know for a fact that these people are probably not going to move? Once you sign up into this program, unless you're evicting them, they're probably not going to be moving out of that unit. And sometimes the way that the market is now is that landlords are actually hoping for turnaround, just for us to reevaluate the rent in order to keep up with the growing increases of property taxes and insurance and utilities.
Right. Yeah.
And this is where it doesn't really balance out of why it's going to be good for us as a private investor. And, profit shouldn't be a bad name. And I don't think the government should be really trying to peg landlords and tenants against each other and make it look like we're really landlords. It's just, this is our business. This is what we need to treat our customers with respect. But at the same time, if you look at the way that this program is, there's other programs such in the region Waterloo where they try to give you $50,000 to create secondary suites. But there's obviously the fine print, how long you're you're going to have that contract for, who can actually take over the rentership in that unit, and what the actual dollar price is. And you might as well get your money from a loan shark versus having to team up with the region in order to be able to gain that money. And again, the purpose of, knowing that we want to help people, and we know that we are a solution to it. It's about creating that supply. But in reality, when the government has ignored us for 10 years of not trying to fix the landlord and tenant board, how are you expecting us to say yes? It's almost like the only thing we have as private landlords to say, no, we can't help you until you help us. And that was our philosophy for the last conference, was help landlords, help tenants, help us, help you, help them. And it keeps falling on those type of deaf ears. And again, it comes with mediation. That mediator is going to look at every loophole and every way possible of how to stretch out that eviction process versus trying to agree with the landlord and try to reposition that tenant elsewhere. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna flip it around here just a second. What are you drinking? What is that? Is it pomegranate? Is it cranberry juice?
Berry hibiscus from Starbucks that has a lot of caffeine in it. I'm up for a phone call, guys. After
you're up for it. Holy smokes! I'll be ready to go watch the football game after this. That's for sure. Hey, okay, I gotta give me. So you've been doing this for a long time. I'll give you my answer in a second, but tell me one win that you've accomplished over the last month in terms of Ontario Landlord Watch. Quickly, give me something that's been a win. Let people know what's going on.
For the win is, I guess it's still about getting our voices out there, getting media calling you instead of you calling them, getting the changes happening at the Landlord and Tenant Board now, saying that they have a plan in place. So being able to speak to the chair of the Landlord and Tenant Board and actually loving our ideas, and talked about us being on the advisory.
That is big. Yeah, having a connection to them and having that relationship, that's step number one, and actually developing those strong bonds and relationships. I'm not saying like as close friends, but just business, right? You have to be able to do that.
They need to hear from the private market in order for us to kind of guide them on what is happening. And a lot of the other solutions that we have that we want to present to the Attorney General is about different products and services that they can adapt and for everyone to use to really streamline the Landlord and Tenant Board, to give them a bigger picture of just instead of just the application in front of them. I think that's what's really missing from the Landlord and Tenant Board, is not looking at the entire relationship between the landlord and the tenant, because we know there's bad landlords out there and we know there's bad tenants, and we don't want to be harping on the bad tenants as much as we are. But if you look at how they're ruining it for the good tenants, and that's why you spoke with Landlord Credit Bureau. That's why we're really excited for Landlord Credit Bureau, because it's going to promote good behavior in our tenants. It's also going to help our tenants, the good tenants, to be able to build their credit, get a house of their own, become a landlord themselves.
Yeah,
and it's going to show that you don't tolerate the fact that you're abusing the system, because every landlord is very much reasonable. They can wait on their money. We're understanding, but if you're trying to abuse the system, that's where we have to understand that you have to draw a line somewhere.
Yep. So what I just heard you say is that setting up the communications and getting your voice heard at the high levels at the Landlord Tenant Board is really, really key. And that is super important. So congrats, right? That's awesome.
Yeah, and we're gonna see what's going with it.
Yeah, that's a success that should be celebrated. And at our end, I guess it was I say 2 weeks ago as you know, I watch a lot of city council meetings and the committees, and I follow all that stuff. I've turned into a real geek that way, especially since everything's online now. I don't have to drive downtown to sit in the chamber and all that stuff and watch. It's much easier watching it online. But 2 weeks ago, there was a committee meeting, Community and Protective Services Committee here in Ottawa, and one of the councillors, Catherine McKenney, moved a motion that said that we asked that the mayor write a letter to Doug Ford asking him to reinstate the eviction ban, full blanket eviction ban. Okay, so that went, after the meeting. So I was reading up on it. I wanted to look at it. So the win here is that I wrote the baseball analogy on my timeline earlier, in that in hockey, I should say, that when somebody makes an assist in hockey, right? You're setting up another player, you're helping another player score a goal. And that's pretty much what Osla did during this time. Once we got that motion, I talked to John Dickey from EOLO, Eastern Ontario Landlords Organization, sorry. And he's awesome. He's top notch. And you've been on the panel with him at the Ottawa conference here. And super knowledgeable guy. He knows what he's doing. And so we, let him know about the motion and worked with him a bit. He did most of the heavy lifting, but we were involved. So I'm going to say it's our first assist in getting a win. Right? We helped him. We gave him the puck. He scored the goal because he managed to get an amendment to the motion saying that the mayor would write to Doug Ford asking that the eviction ban be reinstated, but only for people who are in financial hardships due to COVID, so job loss or income loss, and that the province also provide a subsidy of some type for those tenants. And I think there was also they don't want the province to repeal any aid yet that's going to tenants, whatever that is, whatever is in place. They just want to keep it there, whether it's CERB or something. I don't know what it was. There was something else there. I don't remember word for word. I should have printed it out before I started talking about it. But yeah, so yeah, and that was passed at City Council this week on Wednesday. It was yesterday actually, and they brought it up, and the amendment to the motion was accepted. So yay, we avoided a letter being sent to the province asking for a full eviction ban being reinstated to only an eviction ban for people who really, in my opinion, shouldn't be evicted because it's not their fault that they've lost their job or lost income, right? You can't evict. It's not their fault. But at the same time, the government needs to support small landlords in supporting those tenants. Mm-hmm. So I think it's the right amendment. It's much better than the original one. So woohoo, give it up for Osla. We got a little win there, so we're going to promote that. That's good.
And it is like we have many homeless prevention programs that are out there to tap tenants into funds and to avoid a rent arrears. It all depends. Like you can, walk a horse to water, but you can't make a drink type of deal. So it's the same philosophy that, these are out there. We just need to kind of promote it and help your tenants out in that matter. But what we have to understand is that we have people who are elected in, they were elected by the people, they hold a title as an MPP, and they still struggle to get things changed at the landlord at that provincial level.
It's hard, eh? Yeah.
And you have people who are like, multiple people who are, on the same path and showing that, it's about a help tenant situation in order to help build up our supply in Ontario. But instead, they want to keep putting restrictions and more rules and responsibilities. And we need to be encouraging more people into the housing industry. Yeah. And sadly, it's not happening that way.
Yeah. And I should also add that after the meeting, the council meeting on Wednesday, another motion was moved forward, and it has to do with Renovations. So now one of the councillors is asking for city staff to go back and find out if there's anything that the city of Ottawa can do to prevent or prohibit renovations in the city. So my first thought is, well, wait a second, no, it's a provincial responsibility, not a municipal responsibility, but it's actually happened in BC. With the way they position is that it's an add-on, it's in addition to it. You have the regulations at the provincial level, but we're going to tighten those even further at the municipal level, and we're going to add on to it. And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. So I'm going to be talking to the councillor. I'll text him or see if he can chat about it and just find out what's going on with that, get his thoughts about it, eh? And hey, can I ask you those two questions now?
Give me
we talked about them?
I got a question for you. So with the renovation in itself, and knowing that, we have aging infrastructure, everything does need to come up where we are doing the renos to this, and how you're supposed to try to do it into units when tenants are living there, and we still have that piece where we have to offer it back to them at that same rate. And I think that's where our changes of what we wanted to see with the Landlord and Tenant Board is where you take your expenses of what you cost to renovate that unit, and that's the amount you calculate that in through a period of time, and that's the new increase for the tenant to be able to take back over that unit. But you see that they have the federal government come out with, $1 billion towards the national housing strategy, going towards, the national housing strategy, where they want to build 3,000 new homes. And then they have to have it built within 12 months. It's obviously going to be like a dream come true if they could do it, but they're really starting to specialize in modular homes. Now, for me, in modular homes in itself, we do have people with mental health issues. You think that they're going to really adapt well into small confined spots like the modular homes, and will it actually increase the rents for normal size units in itself? That would be my understanding, because it's like, sorry, it's a modular home, this is the price that you get. Now here's a normal size unit, and this is why you see an increase.
Yeah, good question. I haven't thought about that.
So
I haven't thought about that, so I don't have an answer for you right now.
But I like to be able to bring all these things of where they think that the solutions are, looking at what are the pros and cons to it, knowing that it's not just the Residential and Tenancy Act and the Landlord and Tenant Board, it's also social services, it's also the programs that are out there. Yeah. And that's what we have to see, that it's about connecting the dots and making sure that the ministries all talk together. And that's what we want to bring to Attorney General, is that we need to have all these agencies talking and all the programs talking to each other, especially talking with the small landlords, because we can actually encourage more of a supply. We just need to be able to work ourselves together.
Yeah, and you mentioned the modular housing, and that's the big buzzword lately is modular. At the conference here a couple of years ago, we had Lori May Piroff here talking about what was it, shipping containers being built. She's built triplexes with them, right, and stuff. But those are very high cost. That won't do for affordable housing, right? In quotation marks, that won't do. But she's really good at building them, and she does them really, really well. But they're really not for affordable housing or bringing people off the streets. Long term. And so modular. We also had tiny homes. We had Ryan Carr. He was there, and he was talking, very popular, and those could be doable. And I know that there's an advocate here in the Ottawa area who's very she's pushing for tiny homes and coach houses on the outskirts, not within the city, but in Smiths Falls, Lanark County. And she's had some success, but she's also been frustrated at times. But I like the idea. I think that's, if modular is the way to go, and if those are the cheapest, safest, way to get people into permanent homes, and great. I just find that whenever we see articles being posted or news coming out that the government's giving X amount of dollars to build X amount of homes, the cost per unit is super high. Like $300,000, for a small 1-bedroom or whatever, like $300 a square foot or something for a 1-bedroom type of modular thing or a studio. And wow, there's Luc Boiron, who just moved here to Cumberland, not too far from my place. He's building something not too far from here. I forget what the price was, but my gosh, I think it might have been a tiny home or a coach home. I'll say coach home because we don't have tiny home approval here. Coach home. And it's like, he said, I think it was 60,000. I'll have to ask him. I'll correct that, but I think it was like 60K. Wonderful.
Yeah, but get this one. So if we have 48 units in Kitchener, the dollar amount is $12.7 million. So that's around $264,000 a unit. Then you're taking the concept of splitting that $12.7 million, giving it to homeowners to open up secondary suites, and giving them a high-end unit you could create for probably $70,000. And what is that time frame of creating that secondary suite in someone's home? So now you created 181 units with.
I guess that depends on who you want to give that unit to. If you're doing a secondary suite in your own home, I wouldn't want somebody who was vulnerable or has mental health issues to come in and stay in the basement. Right. That's not something that I would personally want to go for. I'm not qualified for that. It would kind of freak me out, that type of thing.
This is more the concept that you're allowing these developers or these investors to convert these single family homes into duplexes.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's about building that supply. Every elected official is talking about building supply, and every elected official talks about keeping people in their homes. It's a lot cheaper on the system in itself. And this is the concept where we just did a renovation for our unit, and between the two, we spent 70,000 and doing the 2 units in itself. But when you get into the zoning and the permits and this inspection and that inspection, that's where it might kind of up a little bit more, but we're still able to create them a lot faster than waiting 2 to 3 years for a new development, or having to subject people into modular homes with what is that long-term for it. But we want to be able to bring to you guys tonight just the concept of why landlords are not signing up for these programs. It's for the concept that there's not enough protection to the landlords. We're trying to work ourselves into giving them the province solutions on how to give landlords some type of protection. But as landlords, we can't protest. We can't lock people out. We can't say we're not doing maintenance. We can't do anything besides the fact to keep calling our MPPs and showing you that you need us, and we're not going to be able to help you until you help us.
Yeah, good point. Well said, Kayla.
Sorry, man. It's a tough love situation.
And you're right. And we can't do those things, and we don't want to do those things. I think you say like 85% of the landlords out there are good landlords, and we don't want, especially in OLW or Oslo, that those are the type of landlords that we want, and we want to educate people and let them know here's what you can do within the existing rules, and here are the problems that we're experiencing at the landlord tenant board, and let's try to fix all that stuff. Okay, can I ask you 2 questions now?
You got them, and then you can go watch football.
We're way ahead of schedule. This is awesome. Let's see. So I just want to ask you, COVID's been around for 8-9 months now, whatever it is, November, 9 months, roughly, So we've seen a lot of changes. We've seen quite a few changes happen in real estate world and landlording and all that stuff. What have been the 2 top trends that you have seen since the beginning of COVID?
Bill 184 came in very quickly because of COVID. So we have to kind of count ourselves on Bill 184. Not Bill 184 is not everything that we wanted to see, but there are some snippets in there that gives us a little bit, some moving parts. And we got the landlord and tenant board now trying to make those changes. And I can see that being a part of COVID as well. But, we have that need, that public media presence that, housing is obviously an issue before COVID, and it's desperately needed now. And it's bringing sight to how we need to be looking at putting a lot of our resources and our time into creating a solution.
Are there any questions? I don't see any questions. Anybody?
I know we're all into it. I think we got a lot of comments.
Oh, comments. Okay. Yeah, I can't see anything. So I guess I'm just in here as a guest, so I can't see anything. Okay, I'll give you my 2 things. I'll give you my two things about what I've seen in trends. And I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know what's going to happen in the future, of course. But one thing is that we've definitely seen a trend moving towards hotels being converted to multifamily residential, especially hotels that have the kitchenettes or the kitchens in them, because they're much easier to convert to an apartment. If a hotel room or hotels that don't have kitchenettes, they have to go through the whole refurbishing process to make that happen. That's a high cost. Is it worthwhile? All that type of stuff. So we're definitely seeing that in Ottawa. There's 2 hotels today were announced that they're actually, it's happened actually a couple of weeks ago, but it was just announced today. 2 hotels are being converted to long-term rentals. So it's important that if you see that in your neighborhood, if you have rentals, in close by to a hotel that is being converted to long-term rentals, be aware of that, because that's your new competition. And how is your property going to compare with that new, nice apartment building? It's going to be with amenities and everything. They probably have the money where they can keep the money. Oh, my phone's going off. Sorry.
Chris for the silent.
Sorry. So yeah, you have to know it's your competition. So how is your apartment going to, or is it your apartment? How is your rental going to to work, or how well is it going to perform when you have that competition there. So just keep it in mind, right? Like keep watch. That's one thing. The other thing, I've got a few things here, right? We talked about cities asking private landlords to participate in housing the homeless and vulnerable. I've also noticed that very cool, and it's cool to see, this is a good thing, is that we know it's really effed up a lot of people, right? COVID, when it comes to landlords and anybody in the real estate industry, it's messed things up for them. But I've also seen entrepreneurs and business people pivot their businesses to something else, and they adapted. It was bloody hell. I know, they lost money, that it was hard for them, but they pivoted and they changed their business models, and they're doing much better now. For example, someone who's running a short-term rental business, really tough time. Well, they pivoted now to midterm, long-term, and they're into other stuff now as well. So they're getting back on their feet. So that's really good. So I've seen a few examples of that in the real estate industry. And so that's really cool. And I hope that type of trend continues and we see more of that.
With the hotel trend, though, is it going to be competition, or is it going to cause problems for that community? This is where we started to see these as temporary shelters because of COVID, moving people out of the shelters into hotels and motels. Yeah. And
this is a separate, it's not for that. It's strictly for long-term rentals. So it's not going to have, as far as I know, it doesn't have any
government housing type of deal, or like
no, it's just market, private. They're going to long-term renting.
This is pretty much with the national housing strategy that they talk with the one announcement with Justin regarding that $1 billion for 3,000. They talked about converting these hotels or commercial units into the residential side.
They could be. I don't know if they're taking part in that program or not, but that could be. But so it's definitely something that they're doing. And I feel actually when we have a condo downtown Ottawa, and across the street it was a hotel, and a few years back they converted it to student housing. It was a nice big hotel. They converted it all to student housing, right? Can you imagine like what's the vacancy rate there, right, for students? Hopefully they can bring in other people, but in Ottawa it's pretty bad because we rely a lot on tourism and everything. So the hotel industry here, they're expecting an occupancy rate of about 10%, and they don't see it getting any better, or at least getting back to somewhat normalcy until 2023. So they're in tough, and I can see a lot of the smaller hotels, let's say, like the motels or smaller chains, converting to the long-term rentals. And I guess Airbnb doesn't like seeing that either.
But Tony, what are we going to do for tourism? What happens when I need to come to Ottawa for your next conference?
Don't worry about that. I have my shack in the backyard. Hey, put your out there.
I'll have to rent it out then.
Yeah.
I know they're really trying to stop your short-term rentals. Now they're taking up your hotels and your motels. Like we're all going to be pitching tents when we travel now.
I know. Listen, you can pack your family of 15 into the shed there back in our place.
Yeah. Well, that was a tough drive, I tell you.
I bet. Oh my gosh.
Well, Tony, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. We had a quick question here. I'll let you. Is anything that we can do for tenants who damage the property, hold them accountable for the damages, and pay for it rather than walk away? Please advise. So the one thing that we have, like we've been really advocating for in our group, is Landlord Credit Bureau, where you're able to report your monthly payment history for your good and your bad tenants, as well as be able to make a review if there was any type of damages that have occurred within that tenancy. And they also can be able to report the utilities, just making sure that when you're reporting, make sure you have your proof of backing it up if anything had needed to be shown proof to show that what you're reporting is indeed true. And check them out at landlordcreditbureau.ca, and our members get a 15% discount by using the code OLW15. But we like to keep doing these interviews, and I'm going to be moving now. So if you see me a little quiet, between trying to get a meeting with the Attorney General, we're moving on the 5th of November, getting our house that needs serious painting, and hopefully the tenant is leaving that's in the basement. And hopefully we're not going to be the next news story, because we're going to be on CTV News regarding that, where tenants are refusing to move out, and the landlord's trying to sell the house.
When's that on?
Next Wednesday or Thursday on CTV News.
Is it part of W5 or something, or is it just a regular?
Not yet. I'm trying to W5.
Right.
Definitely trying. I'm actually trying to get us a little TV series. Like,
yeah,
we'll be on Netflix. Netflix, Tony.
Yes, Landlord Tribulations, something like that, right? So I should do a little plug here for Oslo. So we're before signing off. So we're about the if we want to do you're talking about joint ventures. Well, we do a split of about 80-20. 80% is about the business of landlording, and 20% is about the stuff where you can pretty much learn anywhere else in many other groups. We're talking about, again, joint ventures, BRRRR strategy, buy and hold, tactics, strategies, a whole bunch of all that stuff. We'll cover a little bit of that, but it's really about how do you run your business as a landlord, right? What do you need to know? So come on over to the Oslo Facebook page, group. I have a group and a page. It really screwed me up, but we'd prefer you if you came to the group. That's where we do most of our live feeds and information sharing, specifically around the city of Ottawa and areas. But we do have some provincial news and some clowning around going on as well. Can't all be serious, Kayla, all the time. So it's got to joke around sometimes, and so we'll be that was a good question that was asked. And so the question that a lot of people have, okay, well, that's great. Let's say you got to fill out paperwork. How the hell do I fill out the paperwork? What do I fill out? What form is it? Do I use certificate of service? Do I have to hand deliver? Can I tape it to the door? Do I need a paralegal? What happens next? Can I fax it? Blah, 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 blah.
What if I kick them out? What if I barricade the door? What if I barricade the window? What if I take their fridge? What if I take their door?
So what is the end-to-end process? If it works properly, what's the end-to-end process? You can't cover every exception that happens. So it's those type of things that we are working on in Oslo. And so, because that's part of the business, and it is now more part of the business than ever before. So it's those type of things that you need to know about. So you got to know the local business news, the rules and regulations, and same at the provincial level. So come on over to Oslo, and we'll have a good time.
See, this is about creating more groups. This is not about having one group to represent all of us. This is about creating more landlord groups and associations throughout the province to really, because you look at the impact of having the presidents and their committees communicating with the elected officials and making those kind of calls. It's actually given us a stronger voice. So make sure that you get over to Ontario Small Landlord Association and support them and all their feeds and what they're going to be able to introduce you to. And I know for us, we're going to continue to keep providing that advocacy in our group, as well as being able to help the day-to-day. And if you are looking for that groups that teach you the BRRRRs and teaching you how to scale your business and grow your portfolio, we're going to be able to get our links to those type of groups onto our website soon, so that you know what they do. But for us, we're here to manage and we're here to advocate, and we want to be able to help you with your day-to-day operation and making sure that you're telling people about the movement and making sure that you're calling your MPP, you're calling the Attorney General, you're calling the Ontario Ombudsman, and making sure that you're signing up with Landlord Credit Bureau, because this is it's the game changer for this rental housing industry, and it's going to bring a bit of fairness to the housing industry, knowing that landlords are just regular people, just like the tenants, and we deserve to be treated fairly, and justice delayed is justice denied right now. And we really hope to get that voice, that message out to our elected officials to give some support to our small landlords of Ontario.
Cool.
Anything else, Tony?
No, I'm done. Thank you, Kayla.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Give us a comment to say that you like what we're doing, what you want to see next, who you want us to get on next, and we'll keep you on an update regarding the Landlord and Tenant Board and any changes that are happening, and we'll continue to keep fighting for you. Thank you so much. Have a great night, guys.
See you guys.